Here we are on the eve of another national championship, the ninth of the college football playoff era. Each one is special. Each one is unique. This one, I would have to say, is going to break ground in one of two ways. So if we have a Georgia national championship as expected, 12.5-point favorite, the last line I saw, then we've got a repeat champion for the first time since Alabama before the college football playoff era. So we will have our first repeat champion in the college football playoff era, Georgia. Alabama, of course, in the BCS era of 2011 and 12 against LSU and Notre Dame. And only three in the past 35 to 40 years. Nebraska back-to-back in 94 and 95. And USC, depending on how you count the Trojans in the 2000s in going back-to-back. So back-to-back has been extremely difficult to do despite the upper echelon ruling college football. You would think the back-to-back model would come into play more in terms of championship in college football, but it shows that it's difficult to repeat. Alabama's had a number of chances to do it. They have not since 2012. So Georgia on the cusp of repeating as champions and putting themselves in a different category. And I don't think there's any question that if Georgia is able to complete the deal, that we would have to consider Kirby Smart and the Georgia football program to be the best, to be the standard in college football. On the other hand, if TCU somehow pulls off the upset, pulls off the miracle, that would not be a miracle. They have earned this. They deserve being here. They can compete. They can get this done. The path is narrow, but TCU is capable, and they can win this football game. It can be done. And, of course, they would separate themselves as a national champion for the first time at that school since 1938. The first champion of the Big 12. Texas last won the national championship for the Big 12, of course. Vince Young and company in 2005. So that's been a long time for the Big 12. First Big 12 college football playoff win owned by TCU unexpectedly. But to come from 5-7 with a first-year head coach, not a first-year head coach, the likes of an Urban Meyer, who stepped in at Ohio State, won a national championship his second year, or other examples we could point to where that particular coach had a illustrious track record that we would expect to bring championships to that location, or because of the location, because of the brand, because of the facilities and everything involved, we would expect a championship to be forthcoming. But Sonny Dykes, great guy, intriguing, engaging guy. We've had him on here 3 or 4 times. Coached at Cal with minimal success, if that's what you want to call it. Very marginal record at Cal. Got fired. Had a 1-11 season at Cal. Also at Louisiana Tech. Nice run there. Had a decent stay at Louisiana Tech and at SMU most recently. That put him in position to get the TCU job. But in no way has Sonny Dykes, up to this season, shown the ability to raise a football program to this level. But here we are. So it's Georgia setting the standard, being the first repeat champion in 10 seasons and one of the few in modern college football history, or it's TCU becoming Cinderella all the way through. If TCU loses this game 52-0, it doesn't take away from their accomplishments to date. But if they can complete this task, it's going to be astounding. We've got the phone lines open right here at the Voice of College Football. We have left the link in the live chat. Please join us. We will take your comments and questions. We've got a number of media guests that may stop by. All of them are in Los Angeles, however, covering the game. So they are going to practices and they've got their own deadlines to deal with and submitting their stories and going on other podcasts and everything that they've got going on. So we don't know who necessarily is going to stop by, but we're going to take your calls. And want to remind everyone that College Football After Dark is back after 1 or 2 weeks hiatus. College Football After Dark with our guys. Oh, Ben's going to be there. Jordan, Will, who knows who else? Tim, Tony, who could be there for College Football After Dark. We believe Ben is hosting tonight, Exploring with Ben. So College Football After Dark, that's at 10:45 Eastern Time right here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel. Let's see who's on the line. And again, we invite you to join the show. One scoop. College Football After Dark is back. Yes, it is. Can't wait. It's a fun time. It always is. I love listening to these guys. Mix it up. Oh, Traveling Fools is going out on a limb. There he's got it. Georgia 24. TCU 26. Wouldn't that be something? Ferris is here. Tim's here. Good to see all of you. The real Hayden as well. Well, Georgia 3-peat. So B-Bean has already counted up the victory for Monday night. So check it off. Don't need to watch the game tomorrow night. B-Bean says we're looking toward 2023. Woo! Well, I have seen some way too early top 25s, which we will release ours in the next couple of weeks, our way too early 2023 top 25. So, of course, we'll get there as well. But same teams at the top. I don't see TCU in anybody's top 10 that I've seen. But yes, Alabama and Georgia right there at the top. Michigan should be vying for one of those spots as well, if maybe they can keep their coach on campus, which I would expect, but we don't know. The real Hayden, is Kendre Miller playing? His coach said 50-50. And that's about as much as we're going to get out of anyone concerning that. That's big. We do not expect TCU to run the ball on Georgia. However, they will have to run it reasonably well. They will have to, if they have one of these dismal rushing performances, like 20 carries for 49 yards, that most likely will not get it done. They are not going to trample Georgia for 250 yards rushing. However, Kendre Miller is a premium back. He is legit top of the line. DeMarcado, the backup, we saw him do some good things against Michigan. However, he's not in the same league. He's not in the same class. And really, he's not the guy to get it done. All right. We've got our guy, Anthony Dasher, stopping by from Rivals. Good stuff. Anthony,
I'm
what's
here.
going on
I finally made it.
Being here?
Yeah, man.
What's going on out there today? How did your day look?
Well, it was the typical day before the bowl game press conference earlier this morning. Both Coach Dykes and Coach Smart, briefed the media on everything that was, what was going on with their respective teams. Both teams had walkthroughs, not too very long ago. And right now, it's just kind of waiting for kickoff. The big media party is a couple hours away, so they're supposed to take us to Top Golf over in El Segundo. So might head over, might not. I don't know yet, but that's what we got today.
Little Top Golf. You should dive in on that.
Well, I'm not a golfer, but if they got free drinks, I might show up. Who knows?
I'm not either. I'm not a golfer either. But very good. So you've been in town since when?
Got in on, when did I get in? I got in on Thursday night, I think. Yeah, Thursday night. My days are all running together here, but we got in Thursday night. Got here in time. I'm sorry. Got in San Diego Thursday night and drove to LA the next morning. Got here in time for the Georgia plane to arrive from Atlanta. So we've been here three solid days right now.
Is there anything you've picked up from hanging around the team, going to practices, news conferences, all the business that you guys do that's giving you any kind of lean on this? Not necessarily in terms of a prediction, like that would change your mind in terms of that, but just anything different about what's going on with these two
Not
teams?
really. I mean, the only time we really got to interact with players was during the big media day scrum yesterday. They do it kind of like the Super Bowl, where they make everybody on the team, all the assistants available for an hour. We got that amount of time to kind of run around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to talk to as many people as we can. But everybody the players seem confident. Guys were joking around, very, very loose, and I think again that kind of goes back to this team. Has experience in this game from last year. A lot of these players have been on the big stage, and I don't think it really bothers them much at all to be where they're at right now.
So let's run down these injuries as best we can. We got Darnell Washington left the game in the Peach Bowl. Delpit basically took over for him, correct?
Yeah, Oscar came in and wound up playing like 21 snaps after Darnell, came out in the first half. But Darnell, we think, is going to play. I mean, there's actually a picture on Georgia's photo website of him, running, have a little ball carrying drill. Coach Mark trying to knock it out from him. So he has practiced since he's been here. And, the injury wasn't a sprain. It was more of a contusion type situation. Not sure yet if he's going to have to wear a brace on the foot or not, but I don't see any way, shape, or form you're going to keep Darnell Washington out of this game. Now, how much he'll play, I don't know, but just having him, even for a little bit, it's going to really benefit Georgia if he's able to get out there, even like I said, even just for a few reps.
Now, Warren McClendon did not even suit up.
He suited up. He suited up for the Chick-fil-A game, Peach Bowl, but he never got in. But he's good to go this week. And Georgia had a couple of other guys who had some cramping issues in the Peach Bowl. Michael Williams, defensive end, Beal, the other outside linebacker, he had cramps, and Chad Chamberlain had a lower leg injury. But he told me yesterday he's good to go. I mean, these are tough kids. I mean, they're not going to miss this opportunity to play for national championship. So Georgia, I think, is going to be pretty healthy, all things considered, for this ball game.
Anthony, have you pretty much stayed with the Georgia beat, or have you kind of crossed the line and looked at TCU at all in regards to just interacting with them at all?
Well, yeah, I did attend their media day yesterday, and again, it's an entirely different situation for those guys. Until they played in the Fiesta Bowl, 10 days ago, only 4 of their players have played in the bowl game, period. And now here they are, playing for a national championship. I mean, this was a team that, was picked to finish 7th in the Big 12. I mean, so you talk about a Cinderella story. I mean, these guys are it. And, all year long, people have been predicting their demise. They're going to lose this game. So-and-so was going to move up in the CFP rankings, but that never happened. And by the time they did finally lose a game in the Big 12 championship, I mean, their spot was already secured even before they played that ball game. So they've from talking to their kids, their coaches, and they really enjoy being the underdog. They've been playing that up, pretty much, all season long, and that's what they're going to try to do in this ball game, tomorrow night. Again, they're 14-point dogs in this one, if you believe what the folks in Vegas are saying, but it doesn't appear to phase them a bit. I mean, they've been in this position before. People have said they were going to lose, and they came out on top. So, team that's playing with a lot of confidence.
Anthony Dasher's joining us from UGAsports.com. Join his work right there on Rivals. We appreciate Anthony stopping by a bunch of times here in the last few weeks to break down the dogs for us. Anthony, in sizing up a lot of the more recent matchups, especially in the college football playoff, have come across some teams that really hadn't faced a quarterback that could maybe move as much as the one that they were facing for that particular game. So it was a bit of a mystery. But with Georgia, you've got Will Levis. Of course, Anthony Richardson's just in another class when it comes to elusiveness and dynamic.
Jaden Daniels, LSU. I mean, they've faced a bunch
Jaden Daniels,
guys. Bo Nix,
all
Oregon.
sorts of guys.
I mean, yeah,
absolutely. So these Georgia guys have seen all sorts of mobile quarterbacks. So maybe Max Duggan might be the most physical guy that they faced.
Possible. Yeah, he's a big kid, and he can, like you said, he can make some plays with his legs. But again, that's something Georgia has done a lot of it. And I mentioned, Jaden Daniels of LSU. That's a big dude himself. 6'5", 240 pounds, fast. But yeah, I mean, it's something that Georgia has seen before. But again, not taking a single thing away from LSU, from TCU. I mean, they've got a Max Duggan is one of the best they've seen all year long, and they had the work cut out if they're not ready for him.
Was this semifinal game against Ohio State not considered the best of performances out of Jalen Carter?
I don't think necessarily so. I mean, there was one play I remember on the near the Ohio State end zone when Stroud went back to pass. Jay Carter was triple teamed on a play. Man, that's how much what it was in pretty much the entire game. They spent a lot of time, paid a lot of attention to doing whatever they could to stop Jalen, and thusly, I mean, his stats maybe not as quite as impressive as what people thought they would, but that's what TCU is going to have to do as well. You've got to put more than one guy on him. Sometimes as many as three, apparently, to keep him from doing what he does. Because if Jalen Carter is able to get in the backfield, then Max Duggan could have a tough afternoon.
All right, Anthony Dasher from Rivals. Have you got a chance to see the stadium?
Yes, we have. We got to see the stadium at practice yesterday. I say practice, so we got to see Georgia take it's a weekly yoga class. Get out there. We waited for probably about an hour or so before they let us in because they weren't ready for yoga yet. So we go on the field and George's doing yoga way in the corner. The back's turned to the media. So we really didn't see a whole lot yesterday from Coach Smart, but that's typically how it goes.
Everybody probably just kind of gazed around the stadium and
it was a chance to kind of take shots of the stadium and make snarky remarks on Twitter, I guess, like I did. So that's really all it was about.
Are you going to take this one in from the press box or on the field?
No, I always stay in the press box. I mean, as a writer, that's where I can do my work and all that. So plus we get free drinks up there. So
absolutely, you do.
I'm just teasing.
Well, free beverages.
Free beverages, actually, Coke.
Straight stuff. Yes,
exactly.
Very good, Anthony. We appreciate you stopping by, man.
Anytime.
Enjoy the game.
Yes, sir.
All right, Anthony Dasher from Rivals. Check out his work there. Anthony's helped us out quite a bit here in the last few weeks talking dogs. First caller of the night. DeAndre's on the line. Look at this.
What's up, Mark?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I don't know if I talked to you since the New Year, but Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. I don't think we have.
Oh, okay. Really, I don't have no opinion on the game, but I was waiting to talk to you yesterday because I heard you say something interesting. But I hope the game is close, and I'm taking the over.
What is the over-under? 63-ish?
Yeah.
Something like that? Okay.
Okay. But I'm not going to keep you long, but I got 3 questions for you. And
you're the only one on the line, DeAndre. Take your time.
So I heard you say that you used to like college basketball. And this is a simple question. The Fab Five.
Yeah.
Do you think they were overrated? Because I kind of do. Because I went back and looked at their schedule back in the day. And their road to the Final Four where they played Duke. And a lot of their top teams in that bracket got beat. And they got destroyed by Ohio State. Do you think they were overrated?
I'd love to go back and look at that too. So that was the 92 team, right?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was the 92 team that I think they had a 1-point lead against Duke at half. And Leitner was having a bad first half. And then Duke got it together and blew them out in the second half.
Right.
Well, for one thing, that team did not win a Big Ten championship.
Right. And they got clobbered by Ohio State with Jimmy Jackson.
Twice. Although they knocked him out in the regional final the next year.
Right.
Or was it that year? It was that year they knocked him out in the regional final in overtime. Even though they lost, they got swept by the Buckeyes during the regular season. And actually it was, Jimmy Jackson's teams that won both of those Big Ten championships. so they lost quite a few games. I think one of those two teams only finished, I think, 6th in the Big Ten.
Right.
They,
I think it was the sophomore year team that was really, really good.
Yeah, and then of course, if Chris Webber doesn't screw up, maybe they win against North Carolina. I'm trying to think don't remember the score or the time left in the game, but they were right there I think they were down 2 or 3 and had the ball, and yeah. So were they overrated? Well, they were overrated. If they were overrated,
specifically about the freshman year. A lot of times people give that team a lot of credit. And I know we're here to talk about college football, but they people I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook, who was better, UNLV or the Fab Five? No, UNLV was, especially if you're talking about the team that ran Duke out the building,
sure,
was way better than the team that Michigan had their freshman year.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was
Johnson.
Yeah, Stacey Altman.
Sure.
My next question is, oh my God, I can't remember his name right now. The Alabama quarterback,
Bryce Young.
Do you think because of Cal Murray's injury history, do you think teams are gonna be scared to draft him over CJ Stroud? The reason why
I really don't think that they should. He hasn't gotten really hurt in 2 full seasons. Of course, now he's going to the NFL, so that's something to consider. But who else is that size? Probably, Russell Wilson's thicker than that a bit, and Baker Mayfield is, but they're little guys.
Baker Mayfield hasn't had the success that we thought he was going to have.
Yeah, I'm not talking about success. I'm just thinking about durability.
Oh, okay.
From that standpoint. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I would hope that CJ Stroud has maybe picked up a few bonus points for the way he played against Georgia. Also from a toughness standpoint, that he, put the ball under his arm a few times.
Okay. Because I was wondering about that. I don't know what Chicago's going to do. I don't know if you've been following, but Chicago now has no one pick because the Houston Texans won. And I don't know how good that kid is for Northwestern. I know people say he might move into guard. But if I was the Bears, I would try to get as many number 1 picks as I can and trade for people to go get it. Because I think Fields is going to be a good quarterback. He just don't have enough weapons and enough protection around him. So I would trade that pick and get it. Now I'm gonna throw you back a flashback. So I was looking at 1985, New England Patriots. Myers is the coach, and Easton is the quarterback. How good was Easton at Illinois? Because with TV not taking off, cable TV wasn't around for everybody like it is now. Mm-hmm. So I never seen Easton play. I know he was a small quarterback, but was he really good at Illinois or?
He was really good. Yeah, I watched him play quite a bit. He engineered an upset against Ohio State in '83.
Right.
And would have in '84, but that was a famous Keith Byers game when he ran for 275 yards and 5 touchdowns against Illinois. They were down. It was a CBS game. They were down 24-0 Ohio State at halftime, and then they came back and won in the last 30 seconds of the game. But Tony Eason was really good. But like you say, if you ever see and you probably have the documentary about the 1983 NFL draft, mm-hmm. The Marino, Elway, and the rest of them, that Tony Eason, Ron Meyer was not happy with Tony Eason being drafted because of what you just stated, that he didn't think he'd be durable enough.
Right. Yeah, and that's my big worry about Bryce Young, because I know, like you said, it's the NFL, but he's so small. It's Kyle Murray. I don't see Kyle Murray or Lamar Jackson, even they transcended players. I don't see their style lasting much longer in the NFL. And I had just got off the phone with Rick Talk, I need to send you his email because he's really good. But I was telling him, I think, like you saying with Brock Purdy, I know Brock Purdy's in a good system, but I think DJ game translates more in the NFL than it does college because he's a big strong quarterback who could throw the deep ball than some of these other quarterbacks. Because of that arm strength, and if you develop him like you see these 4 or 5 year starters, I don't think Brock Purdy's any better than DJ is, and I know DJ was more highly touted, but you could turn some of these guys into um, um, great players just off of development. Look at Tom Brady. Uh, you mean that ends all the story about draft picks and where you drafted.
Well, the whole draft shows us that to a certain extent. Of course, you'd rather have a first round pick and go after an elite quarterback, but there are more misses than there are hits, even in the first round. Slightly more, I think people have broken that down in regards to, how many hits versus misses in the first round of the NFL draft at quarterback. And there's at least as many misses as hits. And then you can find all sorts of really good players that you can develop later on. So yeah, Brock Purdy, it's interesting to see a guy that nobody thought was that special, but he's in a good system. He knows how to distribute the ball and do his job. And that's kind of one reason why I might favor Bryce Young over Kyler Murray from an injury standpoint, because I don't think he's going to try to do too much and hold the ball and run around in circles and do crazy stuff. Kyler Murray's almost too gifted in that way that he thinks he can get away with everything. I don't think Bryce Young doesn't play like that.
Right. And sometimes it's like you just said, it's about system. Look at Kamara out of New Orleans. I don't remember him doing anything at Tennessee. Then all of a sudden, he just burst on the scenes. Willie Parker is a great example of that. It's like, yo, man, I just need a chance. And I mean, he grew up right here in Carolina, and I mean, you never seen him do anything at Carolina. Then all of a sudden, they put him in at Pittsburgh, and I mean, he had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons and won a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just amazing. Sometimes it's just about getting a chance and seeing what you can do. There was another guy. I mean, sometimes it's just about system. Oh, I know what I want to ask you about, and I'm going to let you go. Mike Tomczak, where would you rate his pro and college career? I mean, not rate. What did you think about his college and pro career?
Well, at the point in which he started playing in college, you got to remember that really the first quarterback that was ever allowed to throw the ball a lot at Ohio State was Art Schlichter, the quarterback that came right before him. If you look at Ohio State's passing numbers, they just exploded. I'm talking about, 1978 type of explosiveness versus not today. But so he was kind of the next one in line. Schlichter's last year was 81, then Tomczak took over in 82. And he actually got off to a rough start. They won the first 2 games of the season. Then they lost 3 consecutive games. And I remember everybody thought, the world was collapsing because they lost 3 consecutive games with him at quarterback and everybody wanted him benched. He was only a sophomore. And then they finished with 7 consecutive wins and he really caught his stride and he became not a great player, but I don't know how high he was drafted, maybe a 3rd or 4th rounder, something in that range. I'd have to look that up. I don't remember where he was drafted. He wasn't. He had a really good college career. I thought he was really good. He did get to throw to Chris Carter for 1 season, and had a really good tight end. And John Franks, if you remember him going to the 49ers, he won a couple Super Bowls. But his NFL career, he went to, of course, the Bears first. And if there was any organization at that point that was still really run heavy and really lock down their quarterbacks more so than anybody at that point, it was the Bears. So, he was a game manager, and he was more or less a backup quarterback in the NFL, although he did, earn the starting job at Chicago for a couple seasons.
Yeah, I think he started at Pittsburgh. I think he was right before Slash.
Yeah. Okay. He was right in front of Slash and then O'Donnell, right?
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was a good player. I liked him. He was one of my favorites.
Hey, Mark, I know I said I'll let you go. How did Bill Walsh end up at Cincinnati? I know he was coaching at Stanford, and I know he was a 49ers fan coach. But since I know Cincinnati had to deal with the Steelers, but was he at Cincinnati in the 70s where they were really good with Anderson?
Yes, he was Paul Brown's offensive coordinator.
So I can't remember the head coach for the Cincinnati in the 80s. So,
well, when they went to the Super Bowl, it was Forrest Gregg. When Bill Walsh won his first Super Bowl, they took on Cincinnati and Forrest Gregg.
Who was the one that came up with like the no-huddle offense? He was at Cincinnati.
The no-huddle with Boomer Esiason, Sam White. Yeah.
Sam White.
Yes.
But how did Bill Walsh, why did he leave Stanford? He went to Stanford to go to the 49ers?
Yes.
Okay. See, what I was thinking, the guy that you just named in the 80s with Boomer Esiason.
Yeah, Sam White.
He was over Bill Walsh. So I was trying to figure out how did that happen? So I didn't know that Forster was the coach, the first Cincinnati Bengals and 49ers Super Bowl. So that's why I was asking. And when we started talking about quarterbacks, that's what I was trying to figure out in my head. But I was still like 8 or 9. I didn't want no internet to look this stuff up back then. So I wanted to ask you. So I was like, let me ask Mark. Because it just popped in my head. And, one day we're going to have to do a history lesson on football and just have a long talk about some of this stuff. And
absolutely. Anytime. I love talking about that kind of stuff. I could talk about that all night.
Yeah. But, Mark, you have a great night. I'm going to get Red Text. Check your DM. I'm going to put it in there. I'll make sure I have it because me and him going to do a show together. But I told him to hook up with you. He does a great job. He does a show with one of Pigskin and Pete, Georgia Tech buddies.
Okay.
So he's a great guy, man. You'll love talking to him. Because me and him spent an hour talking about Auburn and Georgia Tech when Auburn greased the wheels versus Georgia Tech. So a lot of people don't know that story, but I know you do. So you have a great night, Mark.
Well, thank you so much, DeAndre. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. I see Uncle Rico's on the line. It's always a good night when Uncle Rico is with us. Kay, good to see you as well. R.W. Tyndall, the real MVP, George, and others. All right. Dr. C's calling in. Dr. C, how are you? Hello. This might be one of the reasons why I got a copyright violation. So, okay, we're gonna have to set the record straight right out of the gate because I got a copyright violation from YouTube today that are threatening to take down my channel. So we can't have that. So if you call in, do not have a bunch of crap blaring in the background, please. All right. We might have a short show tonight because nobody's calling. And I don't want to take any calls from anybody that's going to have copyrighted material blaring in the background. They might take down this. They might take down this feed. All right. So I will leave the link in the chat. And we will go from there. All right. Dr. C's ready to go for us. Dr. C, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Mark?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Was it me that had the TV on too loud, or was it the other person?
What do you mean the other person?
Oh, I thought Uncle Rico was calling in.
No. Nobody else was calling in, just you.
Oh, okay.
No, I was making the comment that I got a slap on the wrist, a violation of sorts, copyrighted issue from YouTube. I got a warning today, and they said if I get another warning, they're going to take down my channel.
Oh boy.
And they said that I had copyrighted material on my last feed, which obviously my last feed was nothing but my last live stream was nothing but this interacting with people. So I contacted help support just to let them know, but I can about guarantee, unless there's been an error, which there probably hasn't, because it's all done by robotics, it's all done digitally, that they probably just picked up background noise from somebody, from a caller.
Oh boy. Yeah. No, yeah, that's tough. What I was calling about was TCU. They're playing tomorrow, the national championship. Have you heard? But I was saying that TCU has the chance to become the USC of the Big 12 in the way that they can recruit locally, and they could be the top dog in that conference for years to come. The only real challenge there, Oregon, would be Kansas State. Do you see that being a possibility? Or do you think this was a one-time thing and TCU, we won't really hear about him in the playoff for the, years to come?
My guess, my projection would be neither. It would be somewhere in between. I don't see TCU dominating the Big 12. I don't see them. I understand what you're saying. Number one, they are the first one to break through. So therefore, they can now sell to recruits more than any other program in the conference, because OU and Texas are leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we are the one program that has proven we can get to a college football playoff. However, that sales pitch is going to be weakened when there's a 12-team playoff. Number one. Number two, of course, you bring up the recruiting advantage of being right there in Dallas. Tons of players. It's almost like being close to Atlanta, being close to Houston, where it's one of the most fertile grounds for future NFL players. However, they've never taken full advantage of that in the past. It is still a small school. So I think everything that you're leaning toward will be a factor going forward, but I just don't think that they're going to be taking over. For example, UCF's in a great place from a recruiting standpoint, and they're joining the conference. Houston's in a great place from a recruiting standpoint. They're joining the conference. I just think there's going to be too much competition that is pretty similar in scale to them. I think this conference projects to be the most competitive conference, not the best by any stretch, but the most competitive going forward.
Do you think that winning the national championship, if they were to, I'm with you. I give them like a 25% chance. But if they were to win the national championship, that would be the difference between them recruiting 3 and 4 stars to getting 4 and 5 stars.
Sure isn't going to hurt. I'm trying to come up with an example of, I really have to go back to the days of Colorado and Georgia Tech to find programs that won a national championship. Of course, in a different era where they did not have to play playoff games, but won a national championship and were really not factors after that. They disappeared. They seized the moment, or Bill McCartney's era, he built a nice program for a very short period of time. With Georgia Tech, it was just kind of a blip on the radar with Bobby Ross, and then he took off. So it was more about having really good coaches and then not being able to replace them. But I think this is more sustainable. Yeah, I just think things are too competitive out there to expect them to dominate the conference, but I think they're going to be a factor, especially in an expanded field.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Just, with the expanded playoff, I mean, in many ways, so many teams are going to have that opportunity, because, hey, we've got a real chance now. Yeah, college football. You bring up a great point. College football is definitely going to change with the expanded playoff as the possibility of winning a title. I think now, the way things are set up now, you have to be in a powerhouse to win a title, in Alabama and Ohio State, Michigan, that type of pedigree to really have a chance to win a title. Now with the expanded playoff, a TCU can potentially win the title.
The catch-22 is going to be that they're going to be given the opportunity. And of course, you need the opportunity to win a national championship. If you don't get the opportunity, then you don't win a national championship. So with the more spots available, yes, more opportunity. So, but at the same time, this is going to be, I don't want to call it the easiest, but this is the most direct path with the least amount of competition that they're ever going to see, except for if they get back in next year, because a Cinderella story in years to come with the 12-team playoff is going to have to get through Michigan and Georgia and, pick your team, Alabama, Ohio State, whomever. And if they're a team that didn't get a bye, a fourth one.
Yeah.
We'll have to get through 4 of those. So what TCU's facing tomorrow night, they're going to have to do that. And what they faced last weekend, they're going to have to do that at least one more time, maybe 2 more times in the future. So I don't know if yes, there are going to be more opportunities, but those opportunities are going to be extremely difficult to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll let you go. I know there'll be more callers, but my random question of the day, wouldn't teams go after someone like Elko and is it Clark over at Vanderbilt?
Clark Lee, yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
They're winning at Vanderbilt and Duke.
Well,
that's almost impossible.
I wouldn't raise Clark Lee up to Mike Elko's first-year standard there.
But he's winning at
he won 2 games in the SEC. He won 2 games.
Yeah. But
which is great.
Uh-huh.
But Elko won 9 games. Elko did a phenomenal job.
He did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a tough place to win. I mean, Cutcliffe won, and I thought, oh man, someone's gonna give him a chance at a big program. And then he retired. But man, Elko,
I don't know what kind of opportunities he got, Cutcliffe, to move on from Duke, but yeah, it took him a long time to build them into a decent program, and then once he did, he sustained it for 5 or 6, 7 years, and then his last 3 or 4 or 5 years, quite a long time, was brutal.
Yeah.
So what Elko did this past year, beyond the record 9-4, they didn't play a bad game. They didn't lose by more than 1 score to anybody. They were in every game. And the previous year they went 0-8 in the conference. And the year before that, the COVID year, they went 1-9. They had lost 17 out of 18 games in the ACC, and they came within a missed field goal of going to the ACC championship game. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, that's a hard place to recruit. The academics are so rigorous. But, he got 26 3-stars this upcoming class. So, man, hats off to him. What a job that he's done. Former defensive coordinator at A&M, and now taking on, a really difficult task. And that he should have been coach of the year. No, wouldn't you think?
National coach of the year. Well, yeah. I can't think of anybody besides he and Sonny Dykes, though.
Sonny Dykes, yeah.
So Sonny Dykes goes from 5-7 to almost winning a national championship, or we know where he is right now. So
yeah, and his teams at Cal weren't that great.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said off the top of this live stream that it's pretty remarkable. So, we've all seen other coaches take over struggling programs, but that particular coach had a track record that would lend us to believe that they could pull this off within a few years. But Sonny Dykes, with all the respect in the world I've got for him, he's got a tremendous offensive mind, but he hasn't done anything on the Power 5 level. He had a bad stay at Cal, and he had a decent run at Louisiana Tech. He had a decent run. He had a nice run at SMU. But really nothing forecasted him doing what he's doing this year.
No, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I mean, did anyone place a bet for TCU to be in the national championship? I doubt it. But yeah, that's the neat thing about this game. They play it on the field. All right, Mark. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks again for taking my call.
Thanks, Dr. C. Have a good night.
Have a good night as well. Bye.
Because we had Sonny Dykes on here, I believe 3 times during his days at Cal. And I believe one of those seasons was probably his last, that he went 1-11. No, that was his first year, actually. Okay. So he went 1-11, 5-7. So he takes over a Cal program. I don't know what they were doing before that, but 1-11. Then he went 5-7, 8-5, won a bowl game in 2015. Then he went 5-7, and he got ousted. So kind of hard to believe what would have led to his firing after one subpar season at Cal. Can't say that I really recall that whole situation. But yeah, he was fired after a 5-7 season at Cal. Now, Justin Wilcox has done nothing but go 5-7 or 4-8 at Cal since then, and he's not getting fired. Sonny Dykes goes 5-7 1 year at Cal, and he gets fired. I don't know. Maybe Cal made a mistake. And look at the Cal football program over the last 60 years, aside from the Aaron Rodgers couple seasons. They've been awful. So, the real MVP's on the line. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. I did not expect to think about Cal football today.
Well, Cal that's football. The connection there. Sonny Dykes.
Yeah, I know, but Cal football.
But think about this. So he takes over a program that's 1-11. His third season, he goes 8-5, wins a bowl game. I believe that was against Illinois. But anyway, he goes 8-5 his third season. So his fourth season, he goes 5-7, 3-6 in the Pac-12, and they fire him. And that was in 2016. Ever since then, they've been doing nothing but going 4-8, 5-7 every year. And Justin Wilcox doesn't get fired.
Well, maybe that says something about what Cal views in terms of their football program as a whole.
Well, they didn't realize they had a good coach.
Yeah, well, my theory about Pac-12 football in general, Mark, is they just don't have the same level of care as some of the other conferences. But, that's to each their own. Mark, I just don't see a way for TCU. I honestly can't see a way for TCU to win. I mean, sure, if they got a few special teams touchdowns, a few defensive touchdowns, everything broke their way, they could win, but the talent gap, in my opinion, is just too big. It's just every position, for the most part, I think Georgia has a pretty good advantage over TCU. And I think Georgia's basically going to be able to do whatever they want. If they want to throw the football for 15 yards, they'll probably be able to throw it for 15 yards. If they want to run it for 200 yards in the game, guess what? They'll probably run the ball for 200 yards in the game. Brock Bowers, maybe to be the MVP of the game. I could see him having three touchdowns, 150 yards, just going off. TCU is a great story, but I just don't think they have the guys.
Yeah, and you're a big college basketball guy, so you realize that to pull off an upset in the NCAA tournament in basketball is much different. You can have one guy or two guys that are exceptional, and it's such a short game. College basketball, the first half goes by like that, and before you know it, you could have a team in trouble, and it's 22-20 at halftime, and then you're still in it. But football is such a long game. There is so much time, and the better team almost always has plenty of time, even if they make a mistake or two or three, especially when they're as good as Georgia, to come back.
And the thing for me is, let's just say hypothetically, everybody of the starters for TCU and Georgia is the exact same. Now, I don't believe that to be the case anyway, but let's just say hypothetically that's the case. I think the depth that Georgia has is so much greater than TCU. I could see where that really wears them down, even if it's a somewhat close game at halftime, like 21-7. I could see that third quarter being at the end of it being like 42-14 or something like that. I think TCU just gets worn down. And also, shout out to St. Peter's.
You're considering 21-7 close at half?
For this game, yes. I said the final score was going to be 56-21 Georgia. So, I mean,
I see more of a TCU being able to hang around, but yeah, just too much time in a football game that I do think Georgia is going to, a little slip of the tongue, I guess, Alabama just automatically throw them in national championship games, that Georgia is going to be way too much.
Yeah, I just don't see it for TCU.
So you have no problem with that 13-point line?
Well, this game reminds me similar of the Georgia-Oregon game at the beginning of the year, where everybody was excited for it, but I just didn't see any way for Oregon just to be competitive, just going position by position. I just thought Georgia significantly better, and doing kind of the same thing for this game. I just think Georgia's significantly better. Now, TCU, they're a great team. They've had a great year, but Mark, players in certain conferences, would you say, are bigger, stronger, and faster than other conferences? Would you agree with that as a general rule?
Not every player, of course.
No, generally.
Yes, because they're all producing NFL players. It's just how many and the quality of NFL player.
So here's where I'm going with this. If you rank TCU versus Georgia, for TCU, I would say this is the most difficult game for them against Georgia. But if you had to rank just in terms of talent, where does TCU fall for Georgia?
Would this even Georgia's schedule?
Yeah. Would this even crack the top 5?
Well, certainly they just played Ohio State, LSU, Tennessee. Those 3 for sure. And then, Mississippi State's comparable. That's what's funny about this TCU run. If somebody told me TCU and Mississippi State and Mississippi State with the whole unfortunate incident with Mike Leach would be a bad example, but I'll stay with them. That's not the reason I selected them, but I was thinking of who Georgia played, and they played Mississippi State and beat them by 4 touchdowns. But if Mississippi State was playing TCU next week, and they were, I wouldn't be surprised if Mississippi State won the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say Oregon is probably more talented than TCU. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Florida, I know Florida's been a complete disaster over the last few years, but I think they're still more talented than TCU.
If we believe in recruiting rankings, which I do, but I think they get less and less accurate as you go down the rungs. There's a reason that if you look at the total team talent composite on 247 Sports, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, LSU, it's basically it's the college football playoff.
Yeah, going by that point,
it's the history of the playoff. It's exactly the teams that play all the time in the playoff are the top 5 or 6. Then after that, I think it's extremely accurate with the Penn States of the world, the Michigans of the world, Notre Dame's, et cetera, et cetera. But then, it starts to become, I think it has more to do with coaching and development as you get into the 20s and 30s.
Well, according to 24/7 Sports, Florida is 14. They're ahead of Penn State by 1 position. TCU is at 32. According to 24/7 Sports, they're actually below Georgia Tech and Missouri in terms of total team talent.
Now, we did see a Cincinnati team in the playoff last year that was based on the recruiting rankings, the least talented team ever to play in the playoff, and they didn't get curb stomped.
Well, I understand that, but I don't think they got curb stomped on the scoreboard. But I think Alabama showed they could do basically whatever they wanted to, and they just decided to run the ball and control the line of scrimmage for that game.
Yeah, they may have shown some mercy and just didn't want to. Just wanted to get out of Dodge and get ready for Georgia.
Right. I remember that first last year, everybody was saying Alabama couldn't run the ball. They were struggling running the ball. That was the big narrative. And what did they do in the first drive? 10 out of the 11 plays or 11 out of 12 plays, something like that. They just ran the ball down the field against Cincinnati. I mean, at that point, I think we all knew where the direction of that game was going. It turned out to be somewhat close by the scoreboard, but never at any point did I think Cincinnati had a real shot to beat Alabama.
I've got to think that the only possibly 2 other teams that have made the playoff with a talent ranking outside of the top 15 would have been 2015 Michigan State and maybe 2016 Washington. Probably would be the only 2. There's no way the other ones. The rest of the spots are all the teams that we know. So that's pretty much it.
You said 2015 Michigan State?
Yeah, I would take a shot at 2015 Michigan State.
Okay. According to 24/7, they were 23.
Okay. 2016 Washington.
Well, they're outside the top 15 for sure.
Okay.
They're 29.
Okay.
So they're the least talented team according to. They're actually more talented than this TCU team, according to them.
And then we've got the Cincinnati team and TCU. Everybody else is in the top 10.
Right, but I think this game is going to show us what the expanded playoffs are going to look like in the future. People want the representation of it, but I don't think people are going to like the final score of it, and I think this is going to be a symbolic.
Well, you know what, though? This may help someone like you who doesn't want to see this for a national championship game. So what happened here was you had Georgia and Ohio State play on one half, and you had a Michigan team who most people thought was the second best team in the country. They get upset by TCU, and this produces this championship game. You're not going to have that in a 12 team because
right.
TCU would just get eliminated early.
Well, they would play Tulane in the first round, and then they would play Utah if they beat Tulane, and then if they win that game, they probably play Georgia. So that would be a semifinal game at most. On the other bracket, it would be Alabama, USC. The winner of that game would play Michigan. So I'm pretty sure Alabama beats Michigan, but we'll say Michigan. Ohio State would play Penn State. Winner of that game plays Clemson. I think Ohio State would make the semifinals. So I think we would have had Georgia, TCU, Alabama, Ohio State as the 4 this year.
Okay. Well, that's 3 of the same 4.
Right. Well, poor Michigan. I mean, they got to play Alabama as their reward for they got
for earning a bye, winning the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, for earning a bye and winning the Big Ten, you get to play Alabama. Some reward. So,
yeah, you might start a fight with some of our Michigan fans that don't see Michigan losing to Alabama this year.
How many non-conference Power 5 games did they win this year?
Yeah. 0-1.
How about they just win one? Just one more. Just one. Can they do that next year?
Which reminds me, I was adding up all the totals for the conference rankings today. I'll be working on that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I imagine Michigan didn't move the needle much in in the positive direction.
No, when they don't play anyone.
Yeah, their big win over Hawaii, wasn't that convincing to you?
No, we didn't factor that into too much.
See, I understand Michigan wanting to play the 3 non-conference games, but I don't think it's fair for Michigan fans to criticize people from the SEC for having a weak non-conference schedule or playing FCS teams when their non-conference schedule this year and next year, I mean, they play no Power 5 teams. Michigan man Jason, Kentucky actually beat a non-conference Power 5 opponent this year, so we're 1-1. Michigan 0-1. 500 records better than 0, right, Mark?
It is.
So I just and we don't know with how bad the Big Ten has been in terms of other non-conference Power 5 results. Maybe this is just an indictment toward the Big Ten as a whole. You know?
Why do we think that the Big Ten was that bad this year?
Well, they had some pretty suspicious losses to their non-conference, like Michigan State. Didn't they lose to Washington or something like that?
Why is that a bad loss?
It's still a loss. Losses count, Mark.
Well, I understand, but it's Michigan State who went 3-6 in the Big Ten. Are they supposed to be beating Washington? Washington finished in the top 10. They will be a top 10 team.
Yeah, I know, but every loss and every win counts, Mark.
Well, I know that they all count, but Michigan State's and I went through I did the seedings. I'm working on, the final tally here. So I seeded all the conferences. I think Michigan State was the 11 seed, the 10 or 11 seed, and Washington the 3 in the Pac-12.
Okay. You're probably right. But
now at the time the game was played, people made a big deal about it because Michigan State was on the cusp of the top 10 at that point, but that was before we found out what they were.
And when it turned out they was a not non-competitive football team for the most part. But the Big Ten, I would say, they Mississippi State beat Illinois, Michigan lost to TCU, Purdue and LSU. That whatever happened in that game, I don't understand. They lost by 8 touchdowns?
Yes.
8 touchdowns, Mark?
Okay. All right. Let me bring some balance to this. Okay. The Big Ten went 5-4 in bowl games, right?
Yes, that is correct.
5-4, not exceptional, not anything to be ashamed of. 5-4. Would we agree that the Big Ten may have played the best competition? Either the Big Ten or the SEC played the best opponents.
Well, I mean, I won't say they played the worst. So,
well, we know that they didn't play anywhere close to the worst. When you have 2 teams playing the college football playoff, so they took on Georgia, Utah, TCU right out of the gate. So they had a difficult, I think 6 of the 9 teams were ranked that the Big Ten faced. So don't look at the score of the Mississippi State-Illinois game. Understand that basically came down to the last play of the game.
That is correct.
The Ohio State. So if anybody's not familiar, if you look at the scores, 19-10, Mississippi State kicked a field goal basically on the second to last play of the game. They were down 10-9. Illinois came within, a couple ticks on the clock from winning the game. Mississippi State kicks the game-winning field goal. Then they've got one more play, and Illinois did one of those crazy laterals all over the field, and Mississippi State took it in for a scoop and score to close out and broaden the margin. So they lost basically in the last play of the game there, and Ohio State and Georgia last play of the game there. So 7-2 was that close.
You're right, but there's other non-conference games at the beginning of the season that's got to factor into it. Washington State beating Wisconsin, Iowa State beating Iowa. Those should have some factor into it.
Absolutely.
Now, my perception of it is I think the Big Ten is still the second best conference. I just don't think they were as dominant as even they were last year, was the only point I was trying to make.
Okay.
So I probably didn't say that in the right way or convey my message correctly. What would it take for TCU to win?
So everything that we saw Ohio State do and LSU do, the difference is that Ohio State was able to do it from the start of the game. LSU started to rip open Georgia's secondary when the game was pretty much out of hand. So that's why it seems like Ohio State was the only team legitimately that was able to expose Georgia's defense, because Tennessee sure didn't and Oregon sure didn't. And those are the 3 best offenses that Georgia faced. So maybe Georgia legitimately has an issue in pass defense, like an Ohio State kind of issue, like they're bad. And then that's, if we see that again, now I don't think Max Duggan can deliver the ball like CJ Stroud, but that's what we're banking on here to keep this a competitive game, that Georgia's secondary, and Georgia really didn't put much of a pass rush until late in the game on CJ Stroud. So if Duggan can, do what he wants, meaning deliver the ball or see a gap in the line and take off and run, that's one big deal right there.
Yeah, the thing for me though is Georgia last year, I felt like their defense has carried them more than this year. So even if TCU is able to score, let's say 42 points or 45 or something like that, I could see Georgia scoring 50 against this TCU team. I mean, Georgia's got a pretty good offense. I mean, the defense obviously is the better unit of the two, but I think Georgia's offense is still pretty underrated. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, Georgia's offense is arguably as good or better than TCU's.
Which is kind of saying something.
It is saying something because as that was coming out of my mouth, I was trying to survey the field and thinking, you know what the tiebreaker might be? Georgia's got an NFL offensive line, and I can't say that I'm an expert and have read up on TCU's NFL scouting reports up front, but I can just about guarantee that Georgia's going to produce more NFL offensive linemen from this team than TCU. The quarterbacks, I think we could debate all night who's a better quarterback. It's extremely close. Georgia's got a greater depth of running. But, if TCU's Kendre Miller who ran for 1,600 yards, can't play in this game or is compromised, like they are really thin. Georgia's got a stable of running backs. Of course, they got the best tight end in the country. So, yeah, to give TCU the offense, maybe, but by much, no.
Right. So this is just one of them situations where TCU was everybody rooted. I think everybody rooted for them against Michigan because they're the underdog story, but now they have to play another game, and I think that also has a factor into it because you have shorter time. You don't have the full 30 days to prepare, get ready for this game. You've only got a week or week and a half to do it. And I just don't see them being able to mentally reset, physically reset, and get to that same mode that's going to be needed to beat Georgia. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I kind of thought the same thing that I thought I saw that out of Ohio State 2 years ago. Excuse me, that they were so geared up to beat Clemson and exact revenge. And of course, that was even much different because of COVID. They were missing players all over the place and all of that. But we're talking about a talent rich roster versus TCU. I kind of thought, wow, if they really exhaust themselves against Michigan, I know it's 8 or 9 days away, but it might be difficult for them to get up off the deck and kind of build up that much energy and intensity and just flat out freshness physically to be ready to take another wallop and go toe to toe with Georgia.
So if Georgia wins this game, you posted a community tab about head coaches and who you think will rise and who you think will fall.
Yes.
If Georgia wins this game, is Kirby Smart number one?
Yes.
And if even if he loses, could he still have an argument for number one?
Yes.
Okay. And the real interesting thing will be Sonny Dykes. I'm fascinated to see where you'll put him out because regardless of win or lose, he's done a lot.
Absolutely. And that is always a great debate, and we will have it because we will go through it, and whether I'll just produce a video or maybe we'll do a live stream and I'll march through all of them, because my approach, as you probably know, is who is the best coach right now? Who's the best? Who's the second best? Who's the third best? Saban's the best all time. We know that. But is he the best now? Well, it's arguable. He still has an argument. But and then you take somebody like Sonny Dykes. If all we were doing was evaluating this season, well, he could arguably be the best coach in the country. But you can't just ignore everything that's happened in the past, even though it's an in the moment ranking. There still has to be context about, just because a coach had a bad season or a great season, you just don't go overboard and overrate them one way or the other. So yeah, he's going to be a difficult one to rank.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at your top 10 right now, and there's a lot of names who I think have underperformed their expectation of where you had them based off last year. Fisher, probably being the most obvious example.
Yes.
Fitzgerald being another one.
Yes, my goodness.
They didn't even win a game in the United States this year. That's
the rest of that list is hasn't really moved much, though. The rest of it, from what I remember.
Well, Winningham at 5, I think, probably bottom of the top 10 was probably where he should be.
Okay.
They had 4 losses this year, so.
Sure, they did win a Pac-12 championship.
And then Dabo Swinney at 2. He's a great head coach, but there's been a continual decline in the Clemson program. And I think most of that can be attributed to decisions directly related to Dabo Swinney, like promoting offensive defensive coordinator within, not starting Cade Klubnik over DJ Uiagalelei earlier on in the season.
And I've got a lot of respect for Dabo. And of course, from a legacy standpoint, he's top 3. But yeah, I need to rank him in the moment, which he still is leading the best team and the best program in the conference. But yeah, there's been decline, and he needs to be held responsible for it. So I gotta, it's easy to go Kirby, Saban, Dabo. I bet most lists we are going to see in the offseason that are ranking coaches are going to go in that order with those three. But I am going to rank this as I see it in the moment right now.
Right. I think Harbaugh should be up there. Harbaugh should potentially be probably top three over what he's done the last few years. Beating Ohio State twice, winning the Big Ten twice. I know he lost 2 first-round playoff games, but how many coaches have even made the playoffs?
Sure.
2 straight years. I mean,
although this last performance, the one against Georgia, did not surprise me in any way. This one, his team just looked poorly prepared. There were strange decisions made in the game. It was not a well-coached game. Not his best work.
No, I understand that, but we can't. That game should, I think, matter more than other games, but I think the whole body of work needs to be taken into account as well. Because I'm sure every coach has had one game in these last 2 seasons they would like to have back. I'm sure even Kirby Smart would like to have this SEC championship game against Alabama back, as an example. So,
yeah, we're gonna have fun putting that one together. I've already started to see what I do, and I've done this with my top 25. That actually makes sense. That'll come out, of course, after the championship game, and then a couple days later, I'm going to go 1 through 131 and rank all the teams for 2022. I've already kind of set I've put them in order of record to kind of put them generally where they should be, and now I'm going to need to kind of dissect and work it around. So the coaches, I kind of like spitballed it too. I kind of just moved them around, but I'm nowhere close to getting them to their final destination.
Yes, you've just got basically a general template of what you think they approximately should be at, but you don't have a set in stone ranking.
Yeah, like I think Mike Norvell was like 53 last year. I just kind of spitballed him. I kind of went up the list. Is he better than him? Okay, 24, or whatever it was, but without going through it with a fine-tooth comb. I just wanted to get a general snapshot and get it close to where it should land.
Hopefully my boy Mark Stoops won't fall the furthest. That's all I'm hoping for. Just don't fall. I know he's going to fall because he was at 8, but
yeah,
hopefully he won't fall the farthest. I think Jimbo will help me out. Even Mario Cristobal will probably help me out with that one. But man, disappointing season for my Cats, Mark. And next year we're probably going to go 6-6 or 5-7.
Yeah, you're already writing off next season.
Well, I do that when Kentucky plays Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee all in the same year. I mean, we drew the short straw when it comes to scheduling. So we got to take it on the chin a few games, I think. 50-7, 63-3 type games. It's going to be brutal to watch. But at least we won't play in a bowl game to lose or a big game to choke or anything like that. So there's upsides to being horrible, I guess. But anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you tonight. Good talking to you.
Well, thanks, Colin. Yeah. Thanks for calling, Derail. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. That makes me curious to go back and look at my I was working on that today. Working on the conference rankings, working on the coaches rankings, wherever in the world I put that. It's in one of these folders. Okay, folks, how we doing tonight? Jason's on the line. RW Tyndall gave you a go Cats. You got to like that. Derail, supportive. We also have a 10:45 show, 10:45 Eastern for everyone with the guys from College Football After Dark. How about that? John is asking about the latest line. I saw it down to 12.5. So does that mean the betting public is coming in, taking those points? I'm not real convicted about this game one way or the other than meaning, does Georgia win huge or do they win somewhat close? I'm in no way tempted like I was with TCU and Michigan, where my gut, the combination gut check and my brain dissecting certain aspects of that matchup against Michigan was telling me, pick TCU, pick TCU, pick TCU. But I was like, everybody's picking Michigan and they should dominate the trenches, and that's where it all starts. So yes, Michigan should win this game. And I picked Michigan, even though my gut was telling me TCU, TCU, TCU. Now this game, there's nothing telling me to pick TCU now, but in terms of the magnitude of this, the worse I could see this getting, I could see this. So, for example, how about that 2012, meaning 2013, January of 2013 BCS championship game, Alabama Notre Dame? That game I knew was going to be a complete destruction and annihilation. That is the last national championship game that is the only national championship game I can think of that from the opening drive, from the first 3 or 4 plays of the game. I know we've had some bad national championship games. Really none that have been just completely horrific during the playoff era. Took Ohio State a while to blow out Oregon. That game was competitive into the fourth quarter. When I say competitive, Ohio State had control, but of course the 2 Alabama Clemson games in 15 and 16 were excellent. The 17 Georgia Alabama game was a classic. 2018. Okay, Clemson, but it took them time. Like the first quarter was extremely competitive. Actually, Alabama was close to having a double-digit lead in that game, and it was like 21-16, and then Clemson took it off from there. But it took time. So that eventually was a blowout, but it was 28-16, I believe, at halftime. So that's still a game. 2019, Clemson was within 3 in the third quarter. 2020, for as much as Alabama blew them out, it was still a 2-touchdown game with about 8 minutes left. And 21 last year was, of course, a great game. Okay. And then before Bama, Notre Dame, if you go back before that, like Bama, LSU, 21 zip. That game was like 9-0 at half or 6-0 at half. And just kind of Bama just dominated the game with defense and running the ball. And then they finally broke through on a great LSU defense. 2010 was a great game. 09 was a really good game. 08, et cetera, et cetera. So, it took Ohio State a while to get blown out against LSU. They got blown out pretty quickly against Florida, but it took until, it's a 21-14 game in the second quarter. So my point, and even that USC Oklahoma annihilation was, I think, at the end of the first quarter was a game. Still a game on the scoreboard. My point being that Notre Dame Alabama game, it's the only game I can remember, a championship game, where I was like, this is going to be like ugly to watch. This is going to be awful. And Alabama just came out and started just run for 12 yards, run for 9 yards, run for 15 yards. Amari Cooper for 32 yards, just touchdown. And then 1, 2, 3, stop. Just 42-14 did not really outline how bad that game was. It was 28-0 at halftime, and it was 42-0. Alabama could have made that whatever. Brian Kelly, I still remember Brian Kelly at halftime. They usually interview the winning coach, the coach that's leading going into the half, because he's going to be in a better mood. But they interviewed Brian Kelly coming off the field at halftime, and he was just, his jaw was practically on the ground. He was just stunned. He was a deer in headlights. He just couldn't believe that they got whipped that bad. So I don't see that happening here. But so that's the biggest blowout I've ever witnessed in a championship game. If anybody wants to challenge that, anybody wants to throw somebody else in as being anything close to, I don't think there's anything close to that. Even the Nebraska Florida 1995, that was I bet the halftime score, or at least the second quarter score of that game, was Florida. What was that? 62-24, right? It was maybe 24-10 in the second quarter, something like that. So even that game, again, can I get a box score, people? Let's see here. Okay, it was 35-10 at half. Let's see how this played out. It was 10-6 at the end of the first quarter. So again, they played a full quarter. It was 10-6. So it's competitive. They were at 15-10. Okay, it was 15-10 sometime in the second quarter. So, yeah, it was a dominant performance by Nebraska. But my point being that 2012 championship game between Alabama and Notre Dame, I've never seen anything like it. USC beat Oklahoma 55-24, 55-19. Mr. TJ Scott is asking for a link to join the show. We have just dropped that in the chat. Mr. Scott, you can join us here at the Voice of College Football. Michael, we just dropped it in the chat. We will hear from Michael. We will hear from TJ. Anybody else wants to jump on board? And we will be live before the game, halftime, and after the game Monday night. Game kicks off at what time? Typically a little after 8 o'clock. So we'll be on live maybe 90 minutes, something in that range prior to. Look at this. McDee's joining us tonight. What's going on, sir?
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. I want to talk about the championship game, obviously, coming up here tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to be honest, Mark. I think it will be competitive in the first half. I expect Georgia to run away with this, though, in the second half. I have the score 48-28 Georgia. I have Georgia by 20. Sort of like Muschamps of Reading Glasses has it, but a little more high scoring.
Yeah, I can see that.
It would not surprise me if TCU's even up like 14-10 in the second quarter. But as my comment said earlier, outside of the quarterback, and I do think Quentin Johnson is the best wide receiver in the game, I think that's really only where TCU has the advantage. Outside of maybe Georgia's one glaring weakness, which is punt return coverage. Georgia has been terrible this year with punt return coverage. So that's like the one thing TCU, I don't know how their punt return stats are, but maybe they could take one to the house off a punt return. That's the only like glaring weakness I see from Georgia.
Not pass defense?
No, because at the end of the day, if they could lock down Quentin Johnson, I don't know who would step up for TCU.
Okay. Well, they've got Darius Davis. He's one of the quickest guys in
That is
college
true.
football.
And I'll just take the talent on Georgia's secondary over TCU's wide receiver room outside Quinn Johnson, really.
So nothing about TCU against Michigan impressed you?
Well, the reason why I'm have this feeling about this game is Michigan left 14 points on the board and gifted TCU 13 points. I mean, Michigan could very easily, at the minimum, score another 2 touchdowns against TCU
Sure.
when they botched it inside the 5 twice. But and they had those 2 pick sixes. And I mean, TCU was kind of gifted 27 points if you could think about it, theoretically.
Yeah, I can't debate that. Of course, it all counts, but yeah, when you've got the ball, excuse me, inside the 1 yard line, first and goal, an average team scores 97% of the time. And of course, then they got too fancy for their own good on the opening drive with the Philly special that was stupid.
Yeah.
Versus, the 2 pick sixes, I get the point and I understand it when you look at turnovers and trying to determine, okay, how, nobody questions a 10-play drive for 75 yards and saying, okay, those are legitimate points. We count those 10 plays, 75 yards versus, oh, there was a pick six or a scoop and score. But, JJ McCarthy made 2 mistakes and TCU took advantage, and TCU's defensive backs had to make plays on the ball. And at the same time, Michigan had 2 deflected interceptions that TCU kind of gifted them, where receivers dropped the ball.
That is true, but they weren't pick sixes.
No.
And I forget what Michigan did with the ball after those interceptions. I think it did score a touchdown on one of them. But I view that game as a lot of things had to go right for TCU to win that game. And they did, and give TCU all the credit in the world for winning that game against Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. But I think a lot of things went right for TCU in that game, personally. And several things bounced their way.
Okay, McD. Anything else?
Just one other quick thing, Mark. I know we'll have time to talk about this after the championship game, but I just want to ask you a quick question. Was your favorite moment of the bowl season watching Mike Locksley get a mayonnaise bath, or what?
Well, he didn't get much of a bath because he had like practically a sombrero on his lid to, protect him. So he basically got mayo on maybe his pants. That's about it. So he didn't get much of a bath, but I got to say that the Maryland defense certainly played an exceptional game, and without some of their best receivers, were able to eke out a kind of ugly bowl win that I didn't expect them to get.
Same here. I remember telling you I wasn't feeling good about the game, but it's weird with Mike Locksley. He's good against the Owl Conference, but when it comes to the in-conference play, outside of he's good at Owl Conference outside of Temple, but when it comes to the in-conference play, it's like he can't beat anybody that's like relevant. So
he's racking up those wins against the ACC.
And that's why we left the ACC. So thanks for taking my call, Mark. As I said, I think Georgia wins, but I will be cheering for TCU, and go Terps.
Thanks, McD. Appreciate it. We keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. TJ Scott's going to join us. TJ, what's going on?
Hello. Not much. I'm just trying to understand everybody else's view on what's going on. Now, I'll admit up front that I'm a Big 12 guy.
Nice.
And I've watched TCU all year. And in my opinion, if Max Duggan can have 2 quarters like the last quarter he had in the Baylor game and the last quarter he had in the championship game that they lost. But if he has 2 quarters like that TCU should win this game. He put them on his back a number of times throughout the season and carried them down. So it just amazes me how many people are just all SEC, all Big Ten. And you look at, and I'm not an expert and I'm not as smart as football as all the rest of your listeners. I'm sure they're all much smarter than me, but do we put any weight at all in the AP polls and the coaches polls throughout the season?
Well, I don't know that we should or we shouldn't. Those people are qualified to various degrees. Of course, the coaches are, but I don't know. I don't believe many of the coaches are actually filling out their own rankings. But of course, a team's going to be ranked based on wins and losses. So regardless of how impressed or not impressed particular voters were about TCU, of course, as they continue to win, they're not going to get dropped in the rankings. I want to get back to what you said about Max Duggan.
Okay.
So this is the problem. Here's a big problem that we have as sports fans, many of us, TJ, is we know what the way things are supposed to be. We buy way too much into the way things are supposed to be. And we'll take our buddy Stetson Bennett on the other side of the ball. For the last 2 or 3 years, Stetson Bennett was being compared at times against like a JT Daniels when he was on the same roster. And Georgia fans wanted JT Daniels to be the starting quarterback and not Stetson Bennett. Why? Not because with their own 2 eyes they could see what's the performance of these 2 quarterbacks. They were evaluating their performance through these glasses that knew what the recruiting rankings were, and that JT Daniels was a 5-star and Stetson Bennett's a 3-star. So JT Daniels should be the starting quarterback, not. And they weren't watching the performance on the field, which was very comparable, if not in Stetson Bennett's favor. No, they knew JT Daniels was supposed to be better because he's a 5-star. So that's the same thing coming into this, is that TCU could run through, another gauntlet of Clemson, Ohio State, and throw somebody else in there, USC. And if they were lining up against Georgia, people would still expect, well, Georgia's the most talented team in the country and TCU's like 30th.
Well, all I know is for the entire season, people have been saying or not the entire season, but the last month and a half, people have been saying TCU doesn't belong. And don't get me wrong, I'm a TCU fan this week, but all year long they've beat other top 25 teams out of the AP and out of the coaches poll, and they keep saying, well, they didn't play anybody. Well, they played Texas. Texas was ranked. They played Ohio State, or not Ohio, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was ranked. They played Oklahoma. They were ranked. So they played. I think that they beat 7 teams that were ranked in the top 25 this season. So I'm going, what do you mean they didn't play anybody? What yardstick are you using? And maybe I use the AP and the coaches poll as a yardstick, and maybe other people are using some other kind of yardstick about how good a team is. So that's my thing. And again, and I'll admit that I'm a Big 12 fan, and I think that the Big 12 is the most competitive conference out there, and I look forward to a good game tomorrow night. And if Max Duggan has a good game, I don't think TCU had a good game against Michigan. That was one of their worst games that I saw them play against Michigan, and they won. If they have a good game tomorrow night, I think it's very likely that TCU will win the game. That's my input.
So, TJ, when you say that the Big 12 is the most competitive conference, I don't disagree with that. you're not saying the best conference. You're saying the most competitive from top to bottom. Is that how
I'm
you
saying the
define
most-
that?
I'm saying the most competitive from top to bottom, and we'll see tomorrow night how good the representative from the Big 12 is when they play in the national championship.
Well, the Big 12 had a nice non-conference season outside the conference during the regular season. Now they've had a poor bowl season, so you put it all
Horrible.
together, and it's all about 50-50.
Well, they had a horrible bowl season. Texas Tech is the only team that won a bowl, now last year's bowl season, Big 12 had a fabulous bowl season last year.
Yeah.
And they didn't really get any credit for being a great conference after that bowl season. But now people are pointing to the horrible bowl season they had this year, saying, see, Big 12's no good. Well, one way or the other, if they have a great bowl season last year, you got to say they're great, or you can't turn around the next year and say, oh, they're horrible. They were horrible last year because
Sure.
bowls don't count. But this year, when they have a horrible bowl season, and they had an absolute horrible bowl season. Okay. I think that Texas Tech had a great game.
Yeah.
But TCU won their bowl, and I think TCU is gonna. I'm rooting for TCU to win their bowl tomorrow night, and I think it's going to be a really good game.
TJ, we appreciate it. I'm going to say, I don't know how long you've been, how long you've been watching us here at the Voice of College Football, but I appreciate you coming on board. And the way we approach things, and I'm going to unveil some conference rankings here after the season, is beyond just looking at 2-6 in bowl games. You know, what did the performance look like? You know, Kansas loses on a 2-point conversion right at the end of the game against Arkansas. The Oklahoma State-Wisconsin game was extremely competitive. Oklahoma, it's really not even completely fair to judge their performance. They were 3-6 in the Big 12, and they were taking on the 2 or 3 seed out of the ACC. So that was a very lopsided matchup. So, you know, we look into it further than just, okay, they're 2-6, they're awful, forget the Big 12.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Kansas Arkansas, first of all, the fact that Kansas was even in a bowl game this year was absolutely fabulous. They went 5-0 and then they just sort of stopped playing.
Yeah.
But when they were so close to beating Arkansas, that was a good game. And I live in Austin, and I am not a UT fan, but so I was not. I think Texas has been overrated ever since Vince Young and ever since Vince Young left.
Sure.
Colt McCoy was a great guy, but after the Vince Young left, and then after Colt McCoy left, I think Texas has been overrated every year. And a few minutes ago, you said something about that we need to look at recruiting classes. Well, Texas has had. I don't think Texas has ever been out of the top 10 in recruiting, but they haven't done anything for the last 12 years. So I think recruiting classes is a lot of extra hype, in my opinion, that, Texas gets all these 5 stars, but they don't. And Texas A&M, they had a really good recruiting class, and they didn't do squat this year. So I'm not so sure that your yardstick on, that recruiting classes mean something as much as the coach that can take these guys and coach them up.
Well, maybe I didn't clarify myself very well. I made the statement that if you look at the history of the college football playoff, which is now 9 years old, and you look at the teams that have basically filled almost all the slots in the playoff, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, and you look at the talent composite on 247 Sports for this current, you will see those top 5 or 6 are exactly the same. And then I made the statement that after that, the recruiting rankings seem to become more vague and not as valid because there's quite a drop off, and there's razor thin slots between like 15 and 40. It's almost like the teams in college football from year to year. You can always look at the elite and say they're an elite. And then as you start to go through the rankings, once you hit about 10 or 12 and start to go through, there's not a whole lot of difference between 10 and 20 and 25 and 30 and 35.
Okay. All right. I had a question I wanted to ask you, but now I forgot what it was. So never mind. Hey, thanks for taking my call. And you said yes. I've only been watching you the last couple days. I just found you the last couple days. So after college football season is over, what do you do for the rest of the year?
Talk about college football.
Okay. And somebody said
constantly.
And somebody said Stetson Bennett has not had a bad game yet. And maybe he'll have a bad game tomorrow, and TCU can really do their stuff. So thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you, TJ. We appreciate it. Great to have you. All right. Good to hear from TJ, Big 12 fan. We need more Big 12 fans. At least it seems that way. Remember, for several months, we were asking everyone to write us in MarkRogersTV at Gmail and leave your team, because I was trying to come up with a tally of trying to get a good measure on our representation of fan bases. All right. Andrew's on the line. Andrew, what's going on tonight? Hello, Andrew. We will keep you in the background, going once, going twice, and move on to Michael. Michael, how you doing tonight, sir?
Good, Mark. Yourself?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there, just watching a little bit of football.
That's right. Don't tell me a score. I am recording the game. When we get done here, I'm going to start from the beginning, take it in. So,
all right, fair enough. So,
if somebody can't stand me in the chat, they're going to post a score.
Yeah. And then they'll get timed out.
No.
So, I hope you're feeling better.
I appreciate it. I'm feeling fine.
Not bad. Have you ever had that feeling before, to where you're thinking, okay, a team that you think is going to win, all of a sudden you're getting that gut feeling like something bad's going to happen tonight, and they're going to have a bad game?
Wait a minute. The team that you thought was going to win,
that you think is going to win,
yes.
Then when you wake up on game day, you're getting that feeling like something bad is going to happen, and they're going to lose. Kind of like a premonition.
Well, are you talking about like a team that, so you're a Purdue fan?
Yeah.
I don't know how many other teams that you root for. So you don't root for any other college sports teams, correct?
No, I root for Purdue, but I follow, just like you root for Ohio State and follow everybody else, right?
Sure.
Same here.
Okay. So you are an NFL fan, I'm guessing?
Yes.
So you got an NFL team?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And they are pathetic.
Okay. So they must be the Bears.
No.
Oh, the Lions.
The Horseshoes.
Oh, okay. Yes, obviously I should have went that direction first.
Yeah.
Okay, Colts fan.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not talking about a team outside of your fandom that you have a premonition about.
Yeah, that's like last week. Take the Michigan game, right?
Yes.
I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna win. Except Donovan Edwards goes off, and then all of a sudden they do the debauchery on fourth down, and you're thinking to yourself, well, Michigan's gonna end up losing. And sure enough, what happened? They end up losing the game. You see what I'm saying? It's like kind of like a premonition. You think you're hoping they win, but they end up like lose. You have a gut feeling that they're going to lose, or a bad feeling they're going to lose. You see where I'm going with this, or have I lost you?
I know where you're going. I don't know where you're going. I know where you're at right now. You're basically saying you had a bad feeling once you believed Michigan was going to win the game. Then they botched the first series, and you had a bad feeling that they were going to lose the game, and they did.
Mm-hmm. That's like I'm picking. Like I said last night, I said Georgia wins 38-24, right?
Yes,
and Stetson Bennett's been playing some good football lately, has he not?
absolutely.
But have you ever had that feeling before? I'm getting that feeling like he's due for a bad game. Like he's had bad games before, and they couldn't come back to it. It hurt him.
Yeah, I can't think of too many bad games that he's had. I know that his deal was he used to make a couple mistakes per game.
Yeah, and those mistakes come back.
He threw a pick six. He threw a pick six against Alabama in the SEC championship game last year, and he threw a pick in the red zone. That was a dumb mistake too. So yeah, he did that a couple times when they lost to Alabama in 2020 in Tuscaloosa. That was a really
That's
big
the game
game.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, he made a really bad decision right before halftime, and he had otherwise before he really got rolling near the end of last season. My knock against Stetson Bennett was in watching him play is I always thought he was a really good quarterback. I didn't see what everybody else saw, that he's a 3-star. I thought he was worthy of the part. However, that they're against good teams, there was always 2 or 3 plays. The other 35 throws he'd make, I had no issue with, but it was about 3 throws. And everybody misses throws. There's a difference between missing a throw and making a bad decision that's costing your team, and he would typically do that.
Yeah, but no, I'm just asking just as a random question. Have you ever had that premonition before? All right, take Ohio State Purdue all of 2018.
Yes,
when I think Ohio State was what, a 21-point favorite,
at least. Yeah.
Of course, I'm talking about the Tyler Trent game.
Sure.
But did you ever think about, all right, with all this going on, do you think something could happen in Ohio State lose? And them losing the way they did?
Well, sure. I did not count that as a win automatically, nor did I when they played at Iowa the season before and were upset as a 4-touchdown favorite.
Okay.
I don't know if I really had a bad feeling that just because of all the circumstances surrounding all of that they were going to necessarily lose the game, but
I guess my point I'm trying to make is that you would think, yeah, Georgia, yeah, your team, but don't you have to have a little bit of doubt in the back of your mind saying, yeah, it could happen tomorrow? Because I'm seeing Georgia fans and stuff like that saying TCU shouldn't even bother showing up tomorrow because it could be an ugly game and stuff like that.
Well, each individual can believe and feel however they would like. I would say that any reasonable person that's watched sports their entire lives and understands that anything's possible should be a little bit, they should not believe that this is a give me and that it's automatic.
Yeah, that's one thing I was trying to figure out. Oh, and I'm going to try to carve out a little bit of time tomorrow to do this, but I'm not sure what time are you going live tomorrow? Or are you going to wait till after the game?
I'm trying to determine what time the kickoff is.
7:30.
7:30 kickoff. Then we'll probably go live like an hour before and jump on at halftime and then right after the game.
Yeah. So one thing I'm trying to figure out, last year when it was in Indianapolis, it was like an 8:15 kickoff. Why are they going so early this year?
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. Well, there are probably people that get up and go to work or go to school, and they're trying to improve the TV rating.
Is
my
it because
guess.
they're in Los Angeles?
We'll see. Yeah. So they're in Los Angeles. They're kicking off at 4:30 out there.
Yeah.
So regardless of where they're playing, if it comes down to an Eastern time kickoff of 8:15 versus 7:30, that doesn't change people's viewing habits. So yeah, I don't know why they made that decision. My guess would be, again, that the Eastern time zone folks can watch the game and not turn it off in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm. This is one and stuff like that. And I hope they give it, and stuff like that. I see they're starting to do a rotation where I think it's the team, but I hope they give Indianapolis another chance, man, to host it again. Because there were so many great reviews last year. It's so nice that you didn't even have to literally go outside to get to Lucas Oil Stadium from your hotels and stuff. You can take the skywalks and then go underneath the tunnel there at the convention center.
Yeah, that's nice when it's 22 degrees outside.
Yeah, and stuff like that. I wasn't too bad and stuff like that. All right, Mark, I'm going to let you go because you got a gazillion other callers.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah.
I missed your prediction. What was your final score prediction?
I have not made one. I will before the game.
And I'm going to miss it.
I'm contractually obligated to. Well, you enjoy your experience there. That should be phenomenal.
Yeah. Sounds good then. All right, Mark. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Have a good night. And we're going to try Andrew one more time. Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, sorry about that.
There we
Mark.
go.
How you doing?
Oh, you're good.
Hey,
what's up?
I think that I'm not comfortable as a Georgia fan with the amount of people that are writing TCU off in this game at all. And it does make me nervous.
Okay. Well, you are a good caller to follow up the last question.
Remind me what the last question was.
Well, not question per se, but the last caller was just talking about. No, it wasn't the last caller. A couple of callers ago was just going on about how Georgia fans are writing off TCU.
Oh, no, not me at all. I mean, Max Duggan is like this year's Stetson Bennett coming in as a backup and, leading his team to the championship game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I saw that movie last year. And obviously, I think the entire team's season has molded them into a group that doesn't ever believe that they're out of the game. I don't think that even if, Georgia was to go up by 3 scores in the first half or any time, I think if Georgia's up by 3 scores at any point in the fourth quarter, it's probably the game. But anytime before that, I'm not going to be comfortable because I don't think TCU is ever going to give up. That's just how they were. That's just how they've been forged all season. And last time I talked to you, I was trying to suss out the Peach Bowl, and I felt that both teams were going to score in the 40 points range, and that happened. I thought Georgia was going to struggle in the red zone. They did. Plus, they missed 2 field goals, which was crazy to me. But and they had a turnover, and the game kind of went exactly as I felt like it would. With this game, I mean, I've heard one statistic that I think is pretty important, and that is that TCU is near worst in the country for QB pressure generated. So Stetson Bennett's the kind of quarterback that if they're not able to pressure him, I think he is going to be able to have a pretty good day against them. And I think that Georgia has probably done a lot of soul searching after the Ohio State game and the amount of deep passes they allowed, which I knew was going to happen, especially CJ Stroud having the game of his life. But I think Max Duggan is capable of doing all that. Plus, he's mobile, and Georgia has had some successes and some failures with mobile quarterbacks in the past. So I think that the final score in this game is going to be probably in the if TCU wins, I think it'll be a close score. But I'm expecting Georgia to win, but I think it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 37-31 or something like that. I think it's going to be pretty close.
Well, we should understand that even though TCU put up 51 points and they're known as kind of a, kind of shoot them from the hip, kind of wild team, and that game against Michigan was in their wheelhouse, and it was far more than in Michigan's wheelhouse. They haven't played crazy games this year. They've played crazy games at times from the standpoint of getting behind and having to come back against Oklahoma State and Kansas State in particular. But they haven't played super high-scoring games this season. So that 51 points, and that was, of course, aided by 2 pick sixes. I don't know that they score 31 against Georgia.
Well, I mean, that is something that I've been struggling with, was thinking about exactly where TCU was going to end up in points. And, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be something like 31-35 because of a late touchdown in the final minute or so where Georgia was up by, 2 touchdowns or 13 points or something like that. And then TCU's driving late and Georgia just lets them have one, takes their foot off the gas a little bit. But I do think that TCU is just going to have the confidence to go out. First of all, I don't think TCU is going to try settling for field goals at all in this game. I think if they get past the 40-yard line, they're going to go for it on any 4th down that's within, 5 yards.
Yeah.
That's not something that they were doing during the regular season. So that could end up, flipping the score one way or the other, where maybe they get 31 points, maybe they get, 13 or something like that if they aren't able to convert it. But I think that if they were to make it a 4-down game, deep in Georgia territory, I think I think that would result in more points. But like I said in the Peach Bowl, Georgia's offense is just, in my opinion, too good this year to be unable to overcome anything that an opposing offense can do if the defense isn't playing up to speed. Where last year, if the defense faltered, the offense wasn't going to be able to save it most of the time. That's just not the case this year, and I'll point to the 4th quarter against Ohio State as proof. So, yeah, when I saw the line move late in the Peach Bowl, that made me really freaking nervous. So I'm going to be paying attention to late line movement. Now that we're less than 24 hours out, I'll probably in about 12 hours from now see where the line is and then check again around 3:00. But that made me really nervous last weekend for sure.
Because it dipped down to about 5.5, right?
Yeah, it did. It got down to, it went for it. I saw Caesars was at -5 I'm in Central Time, so it was maybe 6:00 Central. So it was like an hour before kickoff. It got down to 5. But yeah, man, I don't know if a smart Georgia fan would say, Georgia's going to blow TCU out of the water, or this game isn't going to be competitive, because I see, the same fight that Georgia had last season to not give up and win the championship. I see that in TCU this year. And it's a lot easier for teams to overcome adversity in a game if they've gone through it before, which TCU has done many times this year. I mean, one of the things that Georgia can do against a lot of its opponents is jump on them real quickly and just suck the air out of the room. I think that they can get into their opponents' heads before the second half and make them think that, oh God, it's Georgia and they're scoring and their defense is so good, we're never going to come back. Obviously they're not going to say it, out loud, or they probably, if you asked them, wouldn't say that they ever thought that. But I think subconsciously it does. Everyone knows it's a tall task when you get behind against Georgia, but I don't think TCU is going to care at all. So I'm not as worried about as I was about the Peach Bowl, but I would be surprised if TCU won. I would not be shocked.
Yeah, I'll put myself in the same category. I will be surprised, but not shocked. If you've watched sports for a few decades, then you realize that these things happen.
Yeah. So if Georgia were to win a second national championship, how long do you think it's going to be before Stetson Bennett has his number up in Sanford Stadium?
Who was the last player to have his number put up in the rafters there, or the Ring of Honor of sorts, or whatever they call it?
I don't know who the last one was, but I know it takes a lot to get your number retired. God, I have no idea who all's numbers are up in Sanford Stadium.
Gonna give it a look here.
Yeah, I'm interested too. Is it Herschel? It can't go that far back.
Apparently, yes, there are only 4. And so you've got
Sinkwich, Herschel.
Yes.
I don't know the other 2. I know Sinkwich and Herschel Walker are both up there.
Theron Sapp and Charlie Trippy.
Oh yeah, Charlie Trippy, of course.
So yes, Herschel Walker is the 1985 is the most recent. So yeah, they're very particular, which is good. But yeah, very particular. So nobody since Herschel Walker.
I'm willing to bet that by 2035, probably Stetson's number is going to be up there. Because I was one of these people that didn't give him a chance and didn't want him to play. I talked to you a lot last season about Stetson, but I was at the national championship game and I was next to a Stetson Bennett fan, and he and I were going back and forth for the first 3 quarters because Stetson had that ball that he almost lost on the first drive if it didn't bounce right back up into his chest, and he had the turnover. He had some really, really dangerous throws. He had gotten sacked like all night, and but then after the fourth quarter, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, awesome. And then when I found out he was coming back, I was happy about it, because there is so much value. That's another thing that I think is just going to put Georgia over the top in this game. There is so much value in having a quarterback that has done it all before. And the amount of confidence goes a huge way at that position.
Yeah, so everything you said right there is something that I repeated 85 different times during the offseason, that Stetson Bennett is already a guy who had a chip on his shoulder, who had to have confidence in himself when nobody else had confidence in him. So I never questioned his level of confidence at any point. But to be the guy that gets blindsided with the ball in his hand and had, 5 minutes of replay, determined that he fumbled and there's a huge possibility that he blew the national championship game. Not that it would have been his fault, but people would have seen it like that. And that Alabama was going to win. And for him to come off the deck and have Kirby Smart put the offense on him the next series to throw a couple big shots downfield and him to lead the touchdown drive that took over the game, and they win the national championship when with 4 to 5 minutes left, it didn't look like it was going to happen. The amount of confidence that has to give somebody like that going forward, just, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it is, because just the confidence that I got as a fan from having that performance, like at no point during the Peach Bowl did I think Georgia was out of it. Like I was saying to a friend of mine that I had over to watch the game when they were up in the by 2 touchdowns in the fourth, I was like, well, this doesn't look very good, but I was never like, oh yeah, we're going to lose. It feels very different this season than it has in years past under Mark Richt in particular, but then going up against Alabama specifically with Kirby Smart as the head coach. I just have never felt in any game that Georgia was struggling in this year, which wasn't, I guess, too many, but Kentucky, Missouri, and Ohio State. I never felt like at any point they were going to lose the game. So I can't imagine the amount of confidence that Stetson has. And when it comes down to it, maybe that is the only difference in this game, because I think it was probably the only difference that made it in the Ohio State game. I think that was one of the number one reasons why Georgia was able to come back and win, was because Stetson Bennett just wasn't going to break. And even though I was against him, I was converted last year, and I've been a supporter of him this year. I don't understand. People still don't think he's a great quarterback. He had a phenomenal game in the Peach Bowl. He had bad stretches, but his overall performance was awesome. I don't understand. I know you're an Ohio State fan, right, Mark?
Yeah, we don't talk about that much on here.
Yeah. Well,
just kidding. But yeah. Yep.
Ohio State had a great game, but after, reflecting on it for a couple of days and for the last week, honestly, Ohio State played probably the best game that they had all year. And Georgia played a middle of the road game. They'd had better performances. They had worse performances. So Ohio State's best performance against an average performance from Georgia still wasn't enough for Ohio State to win. So people think that it makes Georgia look fallible, but the fact of the matter is that I think it supports the fact that Georgia is actually an exceptionally good team, because they took Ohio State's best shot and they still won. And they didn't look good. I mean, not on defense, and during the first and the third quarters on offense, I was so surprised at how terrible the adjustments were at halftime from Kirby Smart's coaching staff. That's one thing I haven't had anything to worry about for years. I'm like, okay, if we're not doing well, then we're going to make halftime adjustments. And it went the opposite way that it normally goes for Georgia, where Ohio State came out scoring all the points and Georgia couldn't get anything. But so there was bad defensive performances, some bad offensive performances, some bad coaching performances, but it was all made up for enough at other points in the game that Georgia was able to still win against an Ohio State team that was playing out of its mind. So people that are saying that Georgia's having trouble this year, they need to remember that if Georgia plays its best game, then you get 49-3. And
I don't think you don't get 49-3 against Ohio State. I don't see it as decisively as you do that Georgia just played this horrendous game and Ohio State played out of its mind. I thought Ohio State's passing attack played out of its mind. Its pass protection its pass rush has played better, certainly. You know, I don't know that. Yeah, I just don't see it as decisively as that. But we appreciate you calling.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. Enjoy the game tomorrow and go Dogs.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a good night. Seems like a pretty reasonable perspective from Andrew, where he says, I'm supremely confident in my team, and they're a great team. But hey, TCU is going to show up and play, and we've seen other upsets. This would not be the greatest upset we've ever seen, ever, but it would be pretty high on the list. All right. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, I'm going to double check on the kickoff, which I believe is at 7:30 Eastern time, and we'll be here about an hour before kickoff to take your calls. Unleash my prediction on everyone, come back at halftime for a quick hitter, and then, of course, late night with all of you after the ball game for the national championship call-in show right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Get back here in just a few minutes. We're just about 20 minutes away from College Football After Dark. College Football After Dark with our guys Ben and One Scoop John and Jordan and others. 10:45 Eastern right here at the Voice of College Football. So lock it in. We're only 20 minutes away from College Football After Dark, and we will see you on Monday.